Hello, welcome to the sixth Paris International Film Festival. I am very delighted today to introduce you to two of our filmmakers who have been selected for this 2025 edition. Our conversation will be solely about producing. Producers are important, obviously, but this is not only about production, this is also about making a film happen. Welcome, Clara. Clara Mirabel is the author behind a short film, In Pursuit of the Absolute in French, Vers l'Absolu. It will be screening on the Tuesday, the day just before the closing ceremony. And let me introduce you to Marc Chavez, Marc Anthony Chavez, right? Am I correct? The director behind Haagua, which is an animated film.
Right. It's really not animated. There's no animation, but it's definitely what we consider like kind of like a short documentary, kind of dramatic.
I'm looking forward to dig into that. So my first question to both of you really is in regard to your short. Can you explain what was the origin of the project, or in other words, what was the roots of the project that you created with your team? Maybe let's start with Clara.
Yes, of course. So, as you told, my film is called In Pursuit of the Absolute. The original idea for this film comes from a philosophical book by Nietzsche that was a real revelation to me when I discovered it a few years ago. This book is called Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and this is a dancer who lives in the mountains. And in my film, there is a dancer and a shepherd, and this is a parallel between them.
Wonderful. How about you, Marc? So you say Agua is not animated. Can you talk a little bit about the process?
Yes, well, it's a short film. It's a short film, and it's more similar to a documentary, but it is a little dramatic as well. Um, what the film is basically in regards to indigenous surfers, and it's an indigenous surf film, and what that means to be an indigenous surfer especially within the west coast of California and Mexico. So it's a binational film shot in both Mexico and California, which of course there's a border that separates the two, a political border. But we share the same ocean, and we actually share a very similar cultural background. So for me, it was important to have a film, the first probably ever film of indigenous surfers in California that I'm aware of. And why that's important is because surfing is such a worldwide phenomenon. It's such a popular sport, but it's also a cultural practice. And a lot of times when we look at sports, we might forget about the roots and origins of that. So our film was going back to the cultural practice of surfing and how we are connected. Again, with California and Southern California, particularly being kind of the capital of the surf industry, you will find it very hard, if not impossible, to find indigenous Native American surfers uh, seen in media or seen in films. So this is a thing because for the most part, through colonization, those areas and those beaches, the native people, the indigenous people of those areas were pushed back from the ocean. So for us to actually come full circle and to be surfing now today is a victory for our people, for what we call our regeneration.
Beautiful. I'm looking forward to discuss this point more. Clara, how much did international cinema, not necessarily French, influence you when directing In Pursuit of the Absolute, Vers l'Absolu?
Um, I think that international cinema was very important for me, especially for this film, because I think that my biggest inspirations are mainly international filmmakers. Um, for instance, Terrence Malick, an American filmmaker, is probably my biggest inspiration.
What about you, Marc? Any French inspiration in Haagua, or is it really rooted in the indigenous culture inspiration? You can also talk a little more about that for those who are listening who maybe don't know much about it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, you have, film is such a huge, there's so much genres in within film. Within what we call surf films, it's actually it's specific genre, and for the most part, you let's just say 70% of them have been made with a certain kind of style that is I guess a little I would say non-artistic as you would maybe hope. There is a lot of artistic films, surf films out there, but let's just say the majority of them are not. They're very just kind of a sports film, real rough, real kind of macho, kind of manly, kind of seek and destroy type of vibes. It was very important to me when making a cultural type of surf film that we also incorporated storytelling and filmmaking at a higher level. With that in mind, we used a team, both my co-director and other the cinematographers that were from Mexico. And why this is important is because Mexico has I would say, a very beautiful a very beautiful film culture. And what I mean by that, it's different, even though I'm from California and we're from Hollywood and we have access to all these films, the importance of having the artistic patience and study behind filmmaking, you can find that out of Mexico. And so if you look at a lot of the Mexican films, you could just feel it. It's hard to explain what it is, but you could feel it. So it was very important that our cinematographers and our directors of photography were from Mexico, and they brought a very, very what I would call a high-end artistic value to the film. So you're just not looking at a surf film, you're looking at a very majestic artistic story. And so for me, that's a big deal because this is my first film. And I've been, I've studied film for many years, and again, growing up in California and around Hollywood. But it was always important that we had our what we consumed, we had to look out towards international films. Then that could be French films or any films with outside of our area. And again, that sounds funny because, I grew up in the shadows of Hollywood, but it's a different feel and it's a different importance. So I definitely wanted to make a film that would be internationally very aesthetically pleasing, and that people who could take the time with really watching it could really appreciate it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a perfect film that is really being made also for the theater with that environment and just that feel. Clara, your film is very delicate. Vers l'absolu is just an incredible short. And I really want to ask you, as a French author, why making it so international? Did you hire international crews? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Um, all my team was French. The two main actors were French. One of them was a a Parisian dancer and choreographer, Jérémy Alberge, and the shepherd is a Pyrenean shepherd. So he was born in south of France, and all my crew is French. Yes.
Excellent. So, in terms of international, would you say that for you it's mostly about the inspiration? Would you like to mention any other reference than Terrence Malick, or is it mostly about him and his work?
Um, I think it's mostly about him, especially for the editing of the film. And maybe also for the music, because the music is very important in my film. I use a lot of music, classical musics, and also composition. Um, and maybe that's French documentaries um, use, I think, according to me, less music.
Oh, do you mean that usually there is less music in document? Like, what's the relation with music really?
I think that probably music is less present in French documentaries, and but that's my point of view, of course. So that's maybe the difference, yes.
You explained really well about just how you were inspired to make Haagua happen. Can you talk a little bit about your co-director on the project?
Yes, Octavio, uh, he again, he had made another surf film before ours, and so I was very enthralled by it. Again, it stood out amongst all of the surf films that are out there for their artistic value. Um, and so that was an important uh, a piece to making the film. Octavio is not indigenous, but he again is a great filmmaker. So our actors are indigenous. You know, I'm indigenous to Mexico. Um, he is doing film out of Mexico City again, which just has a great film culture. So just the artistic eye and around that was really great. Working with him again, this is a young director. He's in his mid-20s. So to do that with somebody again that has the eye, and when you're making a surf film, it's in the ocean. You need to have some cinema photographers and even directors that understand the element of water, not just understand the element of water, but understand the element of being in the ocean around waves that are crashing on you. So you need cinematographers that can actually swim out there, that could be in the what we call the lineup or in the ocean. That's a huge piece. There's a lot of people that shoot different things in water, but their actual physical water time or their experience is limited. And that, of course, is kind of a disability on their part because in order to really capture the elements of water, you need to clock in quite a bit of water time, quite a bit of hours within the ocean. So Octavio did a great job, him and his team, and it's just been it's again a great thing to work with a Mexican production crew. It's a lot different than working with a kind of a California production crew for sure.
Understandably. Any upcoming project? Is there any hope for a feature length behind your project, either Vers l'Absolu or Agua? Is there um, any project that you have in mind just to expand that universe that you built with the team?
Clara, did you want to answer first?
I
After you,
guess
yes.
yes.
Okay.
Well, you mentioned the music. How about the music?
Um, so this is a guitar and classical music. And also, as I told, composition. And for me, music is so important in films because it helps to understand what they feel, and it gives according to me so much emotion to the public. And yeah, for me that's very very important. Yeah.
Marc, is there any special care into the musical experience of Agua?
Yes, that's a great question. The co-director Octavio also scored most of the film, so he actually did the music, and again, the music is such an important part to the film itself. is interesting because I had some tracks, some musical tracks that I had uh, previously thought I was going to put on there, and once he scored the music, it was perfect, and I really enjoyed it. So so a big uh, a big shout out to Octavio Coutinho for for the music as well. And it's you were asking about future productions, because it's important because this type of story, you can imagine that has never been told or touched on. To start with just the beginning of something like that, it allows for so much space to expand out and to, yes, continue with the story of what that means. Being it that it's a short film, it's only 15 minutes long. It definitely touches on our voice within media, within the surf world, within culture, and things that people probably never thought about. Like it says, when you turn on the television and watch something from Hollywood or surfers, you're not seeing the local indigenous people. You're not knowing that there's tribal nations that live there on the coast because they're just never seen because they're never covered in media. So for us to just kind of open that up, I think there's going to definitely be a lot more interest in knowing more about that. And within the international scope, which was a kind of a question of one of your questions, was that these Native American tribes, the Native American people within the United States and even within other countries, but particularly within California, we're talking, these are nations. They're not just communities. They're nations who have sovereignty. They're nations who have their own political formalities, their own political structures. So they have their own flag. So it's very international with just in the film. So within the film, you're seeing our crew of, let's just say, everybody with that showed in the film, maybe about 12 people. You're having 12 separate nations, even though they're all from the United States. They're from Native American nations that have their own sovereignty and have their own laws and are recognized by the U.S. government as such. So you're actually seeing a very, people from 12 different nations instead of just, oh, they're all from California or they're all from the States. No, it's more like this is a very international type of film. And what I wanted to do is I also wanted to inspire other indigenous peoples from around the world to kind of tell their story and to see themselves in the film. So it wasn't very geographical specific. I didn't name the spots we're at. I didn't really speak to that within the film because I wanted it to be just an intimate relationship between us or humans and nature and what that means and how long that relationship has been going on before political boundaries or before even filmmaking or media, what that relationship is about. It's an original relationship between humans and this natural world and what we call, the natural law.
I really want to thank you both for sharing about your work. It's very inspiring to our audience to also see how much we can do with a short and how much it can also be about in being international and even producing with various teams.